Hi everyone, my name is Daniel and I struggle with pornography. Simple truth. The last 6 years I have kind of been introduced to it and I have been struggling to get it out of my life ever since. And I recently heard a promise. I heard a promise that I could be free or that I could be immune to pornography. So I want to try that. I want to try to be free. So, let's get into the promise and where it came from and why I want to try it. So, here we go. The promise is from President Russell M. Nelson, and this is it. I promise that as you daily immerse yourself in the Book of Mormon, you can be immunized against the evils of the day, even the gripping plague of pornography and other mind-numbing addictions. So first of all, who's President Nelson? Well, President Nelson is for those who are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, myself included, he is the head of the church and the prophet, seer, and revelator in Latter Days. If you're not a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, you simply might know him as the head of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or as a world-renowned surgeon. Regardless, anyone who has ever met him in person, I have not, unfortunately, but I've listened to him quite a bit, anybody would be hard-pressed to not say that he is a man of God. So, this is pretty powerful stuff. Now, I mentioned that he was a surgeon before he did this. And when a surgeon makes a promise, I kind of view it differently than if somebody just makes a promise to me. Why? Well, I took an EMT class a while ago. And in there, we talked about how in the medical field, you have to be a little bit careful when you make promises to people. You show up on a scene, you arrive, and they are bleeding or they're hurt or injured in some way. And you're to avoid making a promise that everything's going to be okay. Because you don't know that. Not really. Obviously, once you get to the point where it's like, you know the situation, you can make that promise. But in the beginning, you don't know. You're going to use phrases such as, we're going to do everything we can. We're right here. We're not going anywhere. We're going to help you figure this out. Essentially is what, you promise people. So, was this a promise made by a surgeon or by a prophet? Well, obviously, in this capacity, it was a prophet. So let's get into it. So he, prior to saying this exact promise, he gives two other promises, and I feel like they're completely relevant to the third promise. So let's read all of them. The first promise, number 1. I promise that as you prayerfully study the Book of Mormon every day, you will make better decisions every day. That's number 1. Number 2, I promise that as you ponder what you study, the windows of heaven will be open, and you will receive answers to your own questions and direction for your own life. That's number 2. Number 3, I promise that as you daily immerse yourself in the Book of Mormon, you can be immunized against the evils of the day, even the gripping plague of pornography and other mind-numbing addictions. That seems pretty straightforward. And then I really started thinking about it and breaking it down. I wrote it at the beginning of my copy of the Book of Mormon. And I kept underlining everything because I was like, okay, let's actually see where this goes. So, what does it mean to first prayerfully study the Book of Mormon? And so there are 3 things. We have prayerfully study the Book of Mormon, ponder what you've prayerfully studied, and then immerse yourself. Those 3 things are different. They're not all the same thing. So, what are the differences? What are the similarities? How does one relate to the other? What do we need to do to receive this promise, to be immunized against the plague of pornography? Well, what is I would say in order to study something, you first have to read it, obviously, right? So the first thing is to read the Book of Mormon. But my favorite analogy I heard about studying versus simply reading the Book of Mormon came from Hank Smith. Shout out to him, he's amazing. He said that studying the Book of Mormon is a lot like mining for gold. Okay, so we each have our own gold mine, full of incredible things, and every copy of the Book of Mormon is a gold mine. So, to go into your gold mine and to simply expose the gold that is there, to chip away at the rock until you find a vein of gold, because if anyone knows anything, if you know anything about mining gold, you dig around everywhere until you find a spot where there's gold in the wall. And then you try to follow that gold and expose the vein of gold. And it's, sometimes it'll go on really far, sometimes it's only a little bit. But your goal is to expose it. And to me, it feels like reading is exposing the gold. You actually have to spend time in the mine, you actually have to chip away at the rock where you feel like you're not doing anything, but you're exposing it at that point. Then what do you do? After you've exposed the gold, then you actually need to start harvesting the gold. So, in studying the scriptures, or reading the scriptures, you actually need to start thinking about, what is the gold? What am I actually looking for here? Well, you're looking for principles, ideas, things that are actually going to help you understand what is being taught in the Book of Mormon. So it's like, okay, I read the Book of Mormon. Now I prayerfully study. So I ask God to help me. I ask questions. Questions are the only resource that you have for studying. And so you ask a million questions, and you try to find the answers within the scriptures. Why did Nephi and his family need to journey across the wilderness to the promised land? Why would God lead them out of Jerusalem? Why pick any of the stories in the Book of Mormon? Why did Captain Moroni need to fight for the liberty of his people? What is liberty? What's the importance of liberty? What are the ideas behind Nephi and his brothers going back to get the plates? What was the reasons for that? What were the, because at that time you're starting to harvest the gold from out of the scriptures. You're actually seeing what is being laid down as compared to just reading the words. So, we've done that. We've pondered, or we've read, we've prayerfully studied, and then we come to pondering what you have prayerfully studied. And what is that supposed to mean? Well, to ponder something, if you were to continue with the mining analogy, when you pull the rock, or when you pull the gold out of the rock, is it completely free of the rock? No. It's not pure gold at that point. So there's another sifting process that you have to do. You have to now you have separated the gold you've pulled the gold out of the rock, now you have to pull the little rocks out of the gold. So you ponder it, you talk to friends about it, you think about it, while you're watching a movie, while you're on a drive, while you continue to analyze the questions that you have posed for yourself. What was the point? You think about it, and you let the Spirit guide you in that, right? You allow for God to talk to you. You've put yourself in His Word. You've allowed yourself to see, but now you need to move on. Now you need to apply it, right? Okay, so we've read, we've pondered, or we've read, we've studied, we've pondered. Now what's this last one? Immerse yourself in the scriptures. This is the one that I'm focused on, the one I'm excited about, because this is the promise that will help me get rid of pornography. What on earth is immersion? Like, seriously, what is it? And what comes to my mind, I had two thoughts come to my mind when I read this and as I've thought about it. First one is where else do we hear about immersion within the church? Within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we believe by baptism by immersion. And so you not only, it's not just water sprinkled on your head, or you're not just a prayer pronounced over you in order to make covenants with God. You actually go and physically get down into the water and get fully submerged under the water after a prayer. And I was like, okay, what is taking place there? Why is immersion so important? And what is happening with immersion as compared to just water being sprinkled on you? Well, it's a full commitment. It's a full moment of trust, if you think about it, because when you go under the water, you're holding on to somebody else and you're hoping that they'll pull you back up, right? And so I'm like, okay, that kind of works for this. Not totally seeing the parallel, but that's an idea. The other thought I had was it actually also has to do with immersing yourself in water, but this one actually comes from cliff jumping. So my dad, a few years ago, took me and a cousin of mine to Sand Hollow down in St. George, and we started cliff jumping. I was only about 14 at the time, and I was terrified. I was completely terrified because you're throwing yourself off of a massive rock, falling anywhere from 10 to 40 feet and hitting the water really, really hard. And it's like, okay, why would this be immersion? Obviously, you're going all the way down into the water. But even more than that, what strikes me in thinking about this is you're fully committing in that moment. You're immersing yourself in that moment. You're immersing yourself in the idea of the jump, right?
Okay. So, the idea behind immersion. Thinking about it, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. That it would be different from pondering or prayerfully studying. What are you adding by being immersed? And obviously, in this situation, immersion feels like being fully committed. Being without reservation or going in all the way. Now, what does that look like in a book? If you're immersing yourself in the Book of Mormon, or in the principles or in the ideas or the philosophies being taught in it, being immersed seems like it's about giving yourself to those ideas, acting in faith on those ideas. You don't know if they're going to change your life or not, but they could. And so you commit to it. You completely submerge yourself. And you let what happens happens.
This is Into the Spider-Verse with Miles Morales. The climax of the film isn't the fight at the end of the film. That really isn't, not truly the climax. Though it kind of feels like it is. The real climax of the film, at least what seems to me, is when he goes up on his building and he jumps off, completely immersing himself in the idea that he is Spider-Man. He accepts the identity that his powers put forward to him. To me, this resonates with the idea of the Book of Mormon. When we read it, study it, and ponder it, we're superficially engaged with it. Or we're externally engaged from it. We analyze it. You can do this entire thing and not have changed one single thing in your life. I could have watched a movie or read a book or doing all these other things, and I could not change anything about my daily routine, about my philosophies for life. I could just observe it and be like, yep, that's cool, that's fun, that's awesome. There you go. But to immerse yourself in something, to me, speaks of the idea that you allow it to change you. You allow the Book of Mormon to change you. That's how you immerse yourself in it. Now, maybe you disagree and maybe you have more thoughts. Please let me know in the comments what you think, because I might be wrong. But if you look at the rest of the promise, there's a little bit more there that might help us understand this. The promise that as you daily immerse yourself in the Book of Mormon, you can be immunized against the evils of the day, even the gripping plague of pornography. So, what is immunization? What is the idea behind immunization? Well, being immunized, especially with COVID, is my favorite example of how we recently did this, at least globally, was you take basically COVID, you remove some of the harmful effects, and you give it to somebody so that their body learns how to fight it. And I'm like, okay, so if I am giving myself the principles, the ideas taught in the Book of Mormon, I will learn how to fight, or I will learn how to live with pornography being around. Because guys, what is the point of being immunized? What is like at the core? What is the goal with being immunized? The goal of being immunized is not simply to just not look at pornography. The goal of the Book of Mormon is not to simply not participate in the evils of the world. The goal of being immunized against pornography is to go back to living fully, to embracing what God has made you to do, which is be really happy in a long-term sense, not just in the short-term attitude of I look at a beautiful woman and I get this thrill. No, it's so that I can get busy pursuing relationships with women and ultimately find a woman that I want to be with. With a man that's in a relationship already, his goal, hopefully, is to quit looking at pornography so that he has more energy and time and desire to pursue his woman. For women with men, they get rid of pornography so that they want to pursue their man and give themselves. Just, so that we can get back to living. It's really the goal of this. So, because we're all called to live, guys. God wants us to live. He wants us to be happy. He wants us to be excited. He doesn't need us to not look at pornography because somehow it affects him. He needs us to not look at pornography because it's keeping us from being truly happy. And it's telling people who are making pornography that they can make money and that they can keep our attention by simply throwing this, frankly, garbage at us. That's what we're called to step away from, and what these promises are all about. So, I want to try it. I want to try with the attitude of being immunized from pornography. I want to read, study the scriptures, and do this channel to really see if it works. I believe it will work. I honestly, wholeheartedly believe and have a testimony of the prophet and what he's called to do. I truly believe he speaks for God. So let's see. Let's try it. So, going to read, prayerfully study, ponder, and then immerse myself by being fully committed to the things that I learn and to changing my behavior based off of the things that I learn. They don't really talk about pornography in the Book of Mormon, but I bet you anything they talk about what leads to pornography for me. So, subscribe if you're not, so that this can reach more people. Share it, and honestly, please let me know your thoughts. Am I totally misreading this quote? Am I misunderstanding what is being put down here? I'd love to have a discussion about this. I'd love to see your guys' experience. What has helped you overcome pornography? And more specifically, what has helped you study the scriptures in a way that has allowed you to immerse yourself into them? So, remember, at the end of it all, guys, we're all called to live. Have a great day.